Hi, everybody. Like she said, my name is Anna, and I'm going to tell you a story about when I had to rethink my entire career. So about 8 months ago, I was sitting alone in a conference room with my head in my hands, rethinking everything I thought I knew about product marketing. So at that point, I had been in product marketing for about 5 years. So not a hugely long time, but pretty long for a fairly new sector of marketing, and certainly long enough that I felt like I should probably know what I was doing. So for me to rethink something that I built my career around, it had to be something very significant. So that day was the day that I realized me and my product marketing team were bad storytellers. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about how I figured out that we weren't very good at storytelling, how we turned that around, and the profound effect that storytelling has had on our product marketing team, on our marketing team, and on our company as a whole. So in order to tell this story, I need to give a quick bit of context about where I work. So I work at a company called revolutionize. We're located here in Chicago, right around the corner, and we build data storytelling software. So what our software does is it takes data, it analyzes it, and it writes stories about that data to tell you what you should care about within that. So as a result of building out products that write stories, we have a lot of people at our company that think about storytelling all the time. So across engineering, across product, across sales, across marketing, across everybody, people think all the time about how we can get our systems to tell better stories. So why do we do that? Why are we committing our lives to evangelizing data storytelling? And it is because that we know that humans have always communicated in storytelling. You can trace storytelling back to the very beginning of time. In fact, our brains are actually hardwired for stories. If you hear one fact and another fact, your brain will automatically try to connect those facts. That gray matter in between those facts is what becomes stories. Stories inspire us, stories motivate us, and we know that this is the best way for humans to communicate. So enough about narrative science. Why should this matter to us, to product marketers? So I thought I'd start this with a poll. I know from the last presentation that a lot of you have answered this question already, but raise your hand very quickly if you're responsible for some type of messaging or positioning in your company. Great. Now keep that hand raised if you've created some type of a messaging framework. Jobs to be done, personas, something. Great, me too. Now keep that hand raised. Be brave if that messaging framework totally failed. Good. Some of you put your hands down. It's great for you. But for us, what we found with a lot of these messaging frameworks is that people were taking it and using it in ways we never intended. So as we started to roll out messaging frameworks to the sales team, to the executive team, people either weren't using it or they were using it in ways that we never intended. We started seeing campaigns rolling out or sales pitches, and you're just clenching your hands saying, no, that is not what we wanted the messaging to be used for. So that's what we want to talk about. That is the world we were living in about a year ago. Narrative science was going through a transitional time. We came out with a new product that had even more advanced capabilities around writing data stories like a human would. So this caused us to rethink about how we talked about that product, but also how we told our company's story in general. So you name it, you name the framework, we tried to use it. We put this new messaging into everything that we did. We tried to roll it out to the sales team. We gave it over to our demand gen team, and we really wanted to see how it would go. And honestly, it went fine. It wasn't going badly. People were using the messaging. It was going into what we were doing. People were using it okay. But what we found is we really were thinking about the story we wanted to tell about the company, what we believed about storytelling, what we believed about how people communicated. It caused us to think about if we were good storytellers, if we as a product marketing team, if we as a marketing team were good storytellers. So we didn't quite know how to figure this out. So like any self-respecting adults, we looked to the best storytellers in the game. We went and researched Pixar to figure out how they determine how to tell a good story. So with some quick research, we found a list that Pixar put together of 22 criteria to make a good story. So we took that criteria and we ran it against a few of our biggest marketing assets. Our sales pitch, our product video, a few of our product assets, and a few of our campaign assets as well. And it turns out we completely failed. We took the 22, didn't hold up to any of them. So we knew something needed to change. If we believed that storytelling was so impactful to people and how they consumed information, we decided that day that we had to become better storytellers. But 22 is a lot of criteria to use every single day. So we knew that anything we put out for marketing and sales, we wanted to be in the format of a great story. But 22 is too many, so we had to set out and find a new framework that we could use to determine if we were good storytellers for the rest of the time. So, luckily, like I said, we work at a company that loves storytelling. So my friend Nate Nichols, he is the head of artificial intelligence at Narrative Science. I'm not exactly sure it's his title, it's super long, but he is responsible for all of the AI within our systems. He's responsible to make sure that the stories that come out of our products sound like a human. So because of that, he studies good stories a lot, and he actually was playing around with starting a storytelling workshop for the people at Narrative Science. So we knew this was happening, and we went to Nate, and we asked him, how do you find out if something is a good story? So this is the framework he gave us, and it became something that we could use to measure ourselves as we started this journey to become good storytellers. So quick caveat before I walk through this storytelling framework, Nate did not invent this. This is not something he came up with. This is tale as old as time, a storytelling framework that has worked. So you can see here, you start with a hook. So what that means is you start with something unusual, something unexpected, ask the audience a question, whatever it may be, you need to have something to draw in the people you're telling your story to. So at Narrative Science, we have two big things we like to remember with hooks. One is to be provocative and be unexpected. And the second is to make sure you write out multiple hooks for every story you want to tell. We tend to write about 10 for every story we tell to make sure that we are being as unusual and provocative as possible to pull people into the story we'd like to tell. Second, describe the old world. So for us in marketing, the stories we want to tell, we want to convince somebody to do something. We want to talk about our product, talk about our features, talk about our company. So in describing the old world, you have to outline in very specific detail how the world was before your product. So what was life like before they used your product? And then turn around extremely quickly and paint the new world. What can your product, what can your company bring people to make their job better? What can they do more of? What can they do better? And what does that really mean for them? If they go home early, who are they seeing? If they are able to do their job better, what does it mean for their career trajectory? Why do people truly care about the product you're able to provide? And then last, call to action. What do you want them to do? For this piece, two main things to keep in mind is concrete is better than abstract, be specific in the ask, and sooner is better than later. Ask them to do something as soon as possible. So this is the framework we were using, and we decided that day that we were going to roll this out across the entire company. So every single thing we did in marketing and sales through our executive team was going to be within the format of a good story. So this was a big journey for us, a huge paradigm shift in going from product marketing messengers to really good storytellers. So today I'm going to talk about the 5 lessons I've learned as we've rolled this out across the company. So lesson 1, good stories start with people, not with products. So in product marketing, it can be very, very easy to talk about your product all the time. What it does, why it's amazing, why it's better than your competitors, why it's great in situations, but you can really lose the people behind the product. So that is the story you need to tell. For us, we're lucky because we use our product. So to start with this, we actually sat down and wrote our story of why we loved our product within that framework. So we wrote a hook, described our old world, described the new amazing world we had, and then wrote a call to action. And then we asked a few people within our team and right outside of our team to do the same. Took that on a little road testing to some sales calls, put into some campaign messaging, and the response was pretty amazing. Even if I was telling my story, laying it out on the table as to what this product meant for me, if they didn't have the exact same role as me, they started to see it as a much more authentic story. They started to identify with me more than any messaging framework I ever put together. We found that the messaging framework actually became so generic that it was a story for nobody, as opposed to a story that was specifically about a person. So lesson 2, you have to prioritize storytelling. So for us, this is a big decision we needed to make, that we were going to commit to this future and the mission of our company to be good storytellers. So in product marketing, you're spread across so many different areas. You have to be with the product team, you have to train the sales team, you name it, product marketing spends time in it at a company. So for us, we knew that we had to sit down and cross some stuff off our list in order to make sure we were doing this right. We sat down and we determined that we wouldn't put out as much product content. We decided that we wouldn't be testing in new markets. We're cutting back on some sales training. So you might be thinking, those are really important things. I could never cross that out. But for us, if we really wanted to commit to the mission of this company, there's absolutely no better way for us to spend time than to figure out how to tell our story really well and to have every single person in the company doing that as well. So that brings me to lesson 3, get buy-in. So it's one thing for you to tell a great story about your company. It's another for the marketing team to do it. And it's a much bigger task to have the entire company doing it in this way. So for us to convince people that storytelling was important and how to tell the story, we had to do a very specific way to get buy-in. So first we went to our executive team. We took that framework that I outlined about 10 minutes ago and laid that out on the table first, those 4 steps. And then we took examples of companies that have told this story within that framework really well. And then we wrote out our company's story in 3 different ways. We wrote it out as if we were the CEO, we wrote it out from our own perspective, and we wrote it out as if we were a salesperson in a sales meeting. So this made it clear exactly the framework we were using, why we were using it, and what we wanted people to do with it. So by laying it out in 3 different ways, it made it clear that these words that were written were not the exact words we wanted people to use. We wanted people to tell the story in their way within the framework. So what happened is we actually started to get thematic feedback rather than semantic feedback. So instead of hearing change, vary to extremely, instead of changing sentences around, people were starting to give us feedback on how we were painting the old world. If we were describing the new world adequately enough, people were getting into it, explaining how and why they love the product, or how they had heard customers describe how much they love the product too. Which brings me to lesson 4. Good storytelling takes time. It takes a lot of time. So after we got buy-in from our executive team, we had our CEO stand up at an all hands and tell the story about the company in his words within this framework. And then we started to go to everybody in the company and ask them to do the same thing. So it became very clear that good storytelling does take some practice. It takes time. People have to take time to learn how to do this right. So what we decided to do is carve out specific time within the company where people could work on being good storytellers. So Nate started the workshop. We actually have a storytelling workshop at our company that everyone in the company will go through. We do it every quarter, where a dedicated 10 people go and learn how to tell a good story. We implemented mandatory role plays across our entire go-to-market team. So marketing, customer success, and sales all does probably around 5 to 10 hours of role play every single week. What we do is something called ambush. So basically you go to somebody within the team at any time, as long as they're not on the phone with a prospect, and you start asking them questions and force them to tell the story of the company back to you within different scenarios. What it does is it forces people to learn how to flex the story based on where they are and not parrot messaging that you had given them in a way that sounds robotic. Lesson 5, this is probably the most surprising to me. Don't be afraid of your own voice. So as you think about telling stories in a way that's true to you, using your own voice, it can be very scary. Like I said, I thought a while ago that I was a pretty good product marketer, good at messaging, and it hit me pretty hard that I was pretty bad at storytelling. And the reason was that I wasn't letting my own voice shine through. And that was not true of just me. As we started to roll this out across the company, at every level in every department, you started to see hesitation. People are saying, well, I don't exactly know how to say it. Can't someone in sales say it better? I don't know if people want to hear about it in the way I would phrase it. Doesn't matter who they are, people are afraid at first to say it in their own voice. So what we did is we started to train people on telling our story better and telling stories in general. What we did was encourage people to not only talk about what was great, what worked, what they loved, but also to talk about what did not work. So in that spirit, I'm going to talk about a few things that really worked for us and a few things that didn't over this storytelling journey. So the first, I touched on this a little bit, but messaging documents. We tried every trick in the book, and no matter what we did, people took these and used them in ways that they were never intended. They used them way too literally and were trying to parrot things in their head as opposed to telling stories in their own voice. And the second, it's kind of the same vein, is PowerPoint pitch decks. So it's not like we didn't try this, we did. We had one for our new product, but at this point, for our new product, we don't have a pitch deck at all. And the crazy thing is, no one asks for one. So our sales team does not use one. They go to every sales moment for them, whether it be a meeting or a conference, and they tell the story within the framework they know, but they change it every time. They talk about their story, they talk about customer stories, and they talk about stories in the way that would resonate with the person they're talking to. And last, this one is a little bit less specific, but playing it safe. So every step of this journey, from the very beginning all the way through training the company and to where we're at now, there always is an easier route. It would be easier for us to put our messaging into a framework and send it out. It'd be easier just to put together a pitch deck, hand it over to the team, hope it goes well. It would be easier to tell our story without having to use our own voice. But for us, we found that chasing the uncomfortable, chasing what we knew was different and would make people uncomfortable is where we found success within the storytelling journey. So we found that if it is a little bit uncomfortable, it's probably a good idea when it comes to storytelling. But just like anything else, becoming a good storyteller is a journey. I would say we're on mile 2 of the marathon, but I really couldn't be prouder of how the team has really embraced this storytelling in our company. And we're starting to see results. We've seen double-digit increase in engagement within our campaigns that use a storytelling structure. We've seen increased engagement with our website as we started to change certain pages on our website to reflect this structure. We started to see sales have higher success in their meetings. But most importantly, we started to see a real change in the culture of the company. People started to feel like they were part of our story, they were part of our future, and that they were able to use their voice in how they explained it and what we did. And this is something I had never seen before in narrative science, and I had never seen at any company I'd been at before. So this has been one of my favorite parts of this, is watching people across engineering and sales and marketing and the executive team start to tell our story in their own words and watching that resonate with people. So, like any good story, this presentation is going to end with a call to action. So, what I would like you all to do, product marketers, I have a challenge for you. So, what I would like you to do is write out your company story this week. So, take half hour and just write it. Write it on paper, you can type it out, but use the framework. So, use a hook, paint the old world, really talk about the new world, and have a call to action. And write it as if you were just telling your best friend at a bar why you work at your company. Write it like a real human. So once you have that written down, what I want you to do is take it and put it next to whatever current messaging framework you have. And that's it. Just look at the difference and see what you think. So if anything, I think this is valuable for you to think through the story. You can rip it up if you'd like, but if you would not like to do that and would like to talk about it more, I would love to hear from you. So like I said, in narrative science, we're pretty obsessed with storytelling. We talk about it all the time. We also recently wrote a book on it in narrative science. So for the past 10 years, we've been investing everything we have into learning how to tell really good stories. So we took all of that experience, packaged it up into a very short, free 100-page book on how to tell a good story, how to implement a storytelling culture in your company, and the effect storytelling technology can have on your employees. So with that, I would love to hear from you. Please write your story. Thank you. Sure.
We have time for questions.
Oh, yes, sure. So example of hooks. So I actually took the storytelling workshop about 6 months ago, and we had one of our sessions dedicated to hooks. So we all had to go up and say 10 different ones for a story we wanted to tell. So for me, I had to tell a personal story. So my hook was 7 years ago, I spent the day in a Filipino prison on a tour, but then I walked through everything that day and everything I learned and what it meant for me. But any story you can think about, any story from your personal life, any story from work, if you really think about it, there's many ways to be provocative, ask a question, state something that people might have not heard before. Yeah.
Can you talk a little more about ambushing your coworkers?
Yeah, it's been super fun. I actually have my boss here. We actually got ambushed 2 days ago together as we were in a meeting. So what this looks like is we all sit together, but we actually have a lot of remote employees as well. So what ambushing is you go in to tap somebody on the shoulder and you fake them out and say you have something to talk to them about. And then you immediately go into character and say, hey, I heard a little bit about your company. Can you tell me what you do? And their ask is that they have to start asking you questions to find out who you are, find out a little bit about what you care about, and then flip around, tell the story within the framework in 2 minutes about narrative science. So I would say some people love it, some people don't, but people really get into it. We've started taking pictures after it, sending it to each other, judging people on it, giving great feedback. But overall, I think it's been super valuable for people to learn how to do this so quickly and learn how to do it in front of coworkers in a way they haven't had to before. Any other questions? Sure.
Yeah, I just have a question about getting buy-in from senior leadership, especially sales teams, around certification or ambushing. And
Yeah.
about that and how it's perpetuated.
Yeah, I think it's very important to go to leadership first with this. So we are lucky we have a leadership that's very invested in storytelling, but we did go to them with this idea that we wanted to be a storytelling company. We wanted to do things differently. And so they really embraced that. So for us, we laid out the storytelling framework. We brought that pitch to the company. That was one thing. But then we started to see that the leadership team wanted to get involved in the storytelling thing as well. So our president also leads our sales team, and he started thinking about alternative ways that our sales team could learn to become good storytellers. So the ambushing was actually his idea, and he actually has marketing, sales, and customer success all under him, implemented it, but just like anything, it is dependent on the people actually participating. So we found a few people that we knew would be very into this idea and had them start to do it. We started ambushing our leadership team as well to make it two-way. And then they were very into that and willing to do it, which led people to believe that it's okay if you don't get it right every single time. Yeah, sure.
I'm not sure if you said, but how large is the organization and the size?
Yeah, so our team is pretty small. So our company is about 100 people. I would say I think it's easier because it is a small company. However, not everybody sits in Chicago, so we've had to modify a lot of things for remote teams that I think could be applicable for bigger teams as well. So things like ambushing, the storytelling, all of that, we try to include our remote people as much as possible. All of these exercises they're included in as well. However, I do think the smaller the company, the easier this would be. But it's something I'd love to discuss, how to scale it with a bigger company as well.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anna.